This is the Friday, October 25th, 2019 version of the Market Plus segment. Joining us once again is Elaine Kub. Elaine, welcome back.
Good to be here.
Elaine, we got a lot of questions this week about the weather. I know that comes as no surprise. I thought this was a good one to kick us off, though, and that's coming to us from Lexi in Iowa from Twitter, and she wants to know, is there any emotion premium in the market currently related to harvest, weather, or fall field work, and is there anything else that you're watching? Any other topics?
Listen, the weather is a very good topic. Should really matter to the markets. But to answer Lexi's question specifically about the emotion premium, actually there's not. Actually, the thing that's happening structurally to the actual futures and options trade is that the funds are pulling out. The big movement in ag commodities has been to get rid of short positions. They've been exiting short positions all across the commodity board. Corn is the one exception to that, where they've been exiting everything, both the longs and the shorts. So there hasn't been like a big headline-driven rally about this harvest weather yet. That has not yet happened. But whether or not it should, I mean, the weather is a real thing, and I think perhaps it could be traded more than it is. And what else am I watching? The currency movements. Right now is of course a weather scenario because everybody's trying to get things harvested. But while we are so laser focused on is it going to snow tomorrow, we are in danger of losing what's going on internationally. There's Brexit coming up, which can certainly cause sorts of fireworks in the currency markets and the US dollar, and therefore have a knock-on effect in grain prices. So I'm watching that. The Argentine election, the Canadian election had effects on the price of the dollar. Brazilian stuff, I mean, like that currency trade, it doesn't always matter as much as it does right now, but in late October, there are fireworks and potential for more fireworks going into November.
Well, Elaine, we've got another question then coming to us about the Brazilian real from former farm boy on Twitter. He said, how much lower will the Brazilian real fall?
Well, actually, so it fell down to about its 2018 low, but it's bumped back up this week because they did have a vote, finally, an actual legislative action about pension reform. That's been the idea that's been going on ever since Bolsonaro got into office, is that they would get this pension reform actually enacted. And it's not enacted, it's not solved, it's not resolved yet. But they had an honest-to-goodness legislative vote on it this week, and we saw the real go up in price. And so that was supportive to soybeans there for a while, up until Friday afternoon.
And then Friday afternoon, it fell apart for the soybean market in particular.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of the reason probably folks just are disconnected from currency maybe is just because they're so worried about getting that crop out. I know you mentioned earlier when you were on the main show that you drove across the state, you've seen so much weather impacting us. We've got another question here. I think it's very fitting for you to fit since you do live up in the Dakotas, and that is coming to us from Jeremy in Port Austin, Michigan. He said, how many bushels of corn are going to be lost due to the snow in the Dakotas?
It's a very good question, and I have not calculated a specific number, but the number that anyone would calculate is smaller than you would think, right? A lot of corn got snowed on, but snow does not immediately zero out a crop, with the exception of hard red spring wheat, but we talked about that on the show. If you've got hard red spring wheat that gets snowed on in late October, that pretty much zeroes out that field. But corn, it will get harvested. If it was not black layered, so there's quite a bit of corn in the northern tier of the Corn Belt that was not black layered, there's the potential of losing maybe 12% as far as your total weight of corn that you'll harvest off that field. So 12% off of X percent of some number of fields, that's a real amount of bushels that might potentially get lost. But the stuff that's just lodged or just snowed on and it's just going to take forever to harvest in December when it's still snowing, that will eventually come to the market. Those pounds will eventually come to the market and will end up on a supply and demand table. They might have some damage, but they'll still be blended off and still be usable by the industry. So it's not a huge, so that snow in the Dakotas was not hugely bullish to the corn market as far as supply goes. It was just a real pain in the neck for logistics of getting it actually harvested, and it perhaps took some number of pounds off of some fields.
Well, I think the other thing I just was reading again today, and I hate to even bring it up, but it's like now the Army Corps of Engineers is forewarning Missouri residents or Nebraska residents again that 2020 might bring another wet spring. And we've got a question coming to us from Bradley in Upland, Nebraska. He said, what's the weather outlook for poor harvest conditions in the northern plains or the outlook for a major drought moving into the western plains next year?
Yeah, so that's pretty long-term forecast. But the near-term one about the poor harvest weather in the northern plains, it's not just the northern plains, it's central Corn Belt too. Like here in Des Moines, I think you guys are forecast to get some snow on Tuesday. So this pattern of, you get a couple of dry days, but not enough dry days to really get things dry, and then more precipitation, and so you're getting equipment stuck and dryers on fire and all kinds of problems that people are having this harvest season. That forecast extends not just the northern plains, but all across the Corn Belt and everywhere. And that's really the thing you see as you drive around, is that this is the end of October and there's really not very much harvested right now. I mean, I think the corn harvest is 17 percentage points behind its average pace. The maturity is only 10% behind the average pace. So there's corn that certainly could be harvested now if logistically you could just physically get the equipment out to do it. So I think I got off topic a little bit there, but as far as, next spring, that drought that's building up out of the southern plains, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We have a lot of weather, a lot of time between now and next spring.
Do you think that we're setting ourselves up for a repeat of the 2019 growing season, though? I mean, I've had people say, I am concerned I'm not going to get my fall field work done again, which kicks it out to the spring and really started the debacle this year.
That's true. The logistics of it, it's certainly a challenge. And yeah, the soil moisture profile is so full right now that if you do get another wet spring, absolutely, it could be just as much of a problem. But I mean, I don't think it's a tradable thing right now. I wouldn't, necessarily go long in 2020 December corn yet based on that alone. In fact, I'd be selling 2020 corn.
Okay. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, just because prices are historically at a good profitable price level so farmers can lock in a profit for 2020. And the expectation is, as long as we don't have another, I mean, it's just very rare to see a spring like 2019. If you had another one in a row, that would be extraordinarily statistically unlikely, historically unlikely. If it did happen, sure, that would be bullish. But in the meantime, you could lock in a profitable price level in the expectation that we always tend to see record harvests eventually.
Mother Nature doesn't like to cooperate, though, Elaine.
Yeah, sure. Hopefully she doesn't cooperate in Brazil. Hopefully they're the ones that have the weather problems and not us.
Right, because as you mentioned, that was bullish for soybeans.
Right.
It could be very bullish for soybeans. We've got another question here, switching to the wheat market, coming to us from Dave in Kansas. He wants to know, will wheat spreads actually work?
Well, I don't know. Like intermarket wheat spreads. I mean, they're a little bit weird right now when you look at that hard red spring wheat, which I've been talking about. We're talking about actual loss of bushels because of this weather, and you don't see the historically normal premium for hard red spring wheat over the Chicago wheat market. So in my opinion, yes, there's an opportunity to be spreading the intermarket wheat spread in that way, to be long Minneapolis and short Chicago. That would be a potential play, but we have not seen that reflected yet. So, I mean, proceed with caution.
Okay, proceed with caution. Elaine, a couple more questions here as we wrap it up. I want to talk about the pig markets because we talked about them at the end of the show there, but we've also got a really good question to us coming from @NebraskaPigs on Twitter, and that's, can pork exports keep up with the massive supplies and growth in the U.S.?
Yes. So as far as the actual pounds of pork leaving this country, yes. As far as the demand or the appetite for the product, absolutely. The appetite is there, especially coming from Asia and coming from China, who, as we know, lost 40% or 50% of their swine herd. So the actual movement of that product could happen, but the prices, as we mentioned on the show, it just cannot really move up right now because you still have to pay that 62% tariff. If you could get rid of the tariff, then yes, you could be moving the actual pounds of product and moving it at a higher price.
Well, the tariff thing, the tit for tat there is really just something that we continue to watch, and it's contingent, of course, on a phase 1 deal getting signed. And so latest rumors are saying that during the whatever meeting that is going on in Chile, I believe here in November, is when they're hoping to get that phase 1 deal signed. If we don't see that phase 1 deal, it falls apart, what is that going to do, especially for the soybean and pork markets?
I think then that's status quo. I think that the markets do not currently reflect a change in the trade war scenario. So if it just continues with this tariffs and badness, I think of a better word, then then I would say status quo as far as futures prices go. If something actually notable occurs at your Chile meeting in November, then my opinion will change.
What will your opinion change to?
Well, then we start to be bullish. But gosh, we've been saying this for 18 months that, if something happens, if they get a deal done, and then it just never happens.
Okay. Elaine Kub, thank you so much.
Thanks, Delaney.
Join us again next week when we'll explore how farmers in one state are finding new opportunities to sell their wares, and Sean Hackett will join us at the Market to Market table. Until then, thanks for watching, listening, or reading. I'm Delaney Howell. Have a great week.